This week's episode of Psycho-Pass Season 2, we are given a lot of information. Absolutely a lot of answers are given to us. Like, all the questions that we've been dying to have answered pretty much got answered with this week's episode of Psycho-Pass. But with every new answer that is brought to light, we get more questions and a lot more theories and different things going on with this episode. For one thing, there is one specific scene in this episode of Psycho-Pass Season 2 that stood out from all the other scenes from this episode. One scene specifically stood out. And probably majority of people that watch this episode would look at this scene as if it was useless. The Grandma Akane scene. That scene at first glance, honestly speaking, it looks useless. But judging by the way they put emphasis on Akane's grandmother's earring, if you look at the grandma's earring, it shines on the side that Akane can't see, and the scene looks pointless. But I have a theory about that scene. I think that entire scene was setting up for probably a plot twist in the future, and the reason why I'm saying this is because of the very odd way that scene was perceived in this episode. For instance, you have it where Akane goes to the hospital because she finds out some of the robots pretty much are just going off the wall. For instance, they're malfunctioning. She goes there and she sees how everybody's pretty much dead in the hospital, but she goes into her grandma's room and everything is fine. And clearly outside the door, it was fucking trashed and wrecked. So, here's the theory. Now, I could be wrong, and it could be possibly a useless part of this episode, but I think there's something else going on there, so I want to hold on to my theory. I think the iPad that the grandma was using in that scene, she was playing the game and killing people in the hospital. Now, we know that the footage was deactivated. We know for a fact the footage was deactivated and everybody could see who they're killing now, because it was displayed in this episode with a one dude, like, killing people and getting excited from it. He was. So this right here makes me think about a couple of different things with this grandmother. Either the grandmother is kind of ill. Since she's in the hospital, she might have some form of brain damage or something to where she doesn't really recognize what's going on the iPad. She thinks it might be an interactive movie or something. I want to say it right now. Or that is a hologram. That is a specific hologram of Akane's grandmother. It's a possibility that's not really Akane's grandmother and that was someone else killing everybody in the hospital to get Akane's attention. That's a possibility, because they put a lot of emphasis on that fucking shiny earring. Like, you don't put animation like that with the shine on the earring of a grandma on this useless scene of the episode if it wasn't for nothing. So, I'm just gonna hold on to that theory and say that grandma is probably either not the actual real grandma, or she was aware that she was probably killing people. Like, you know, it wasn't said who killed anyone in the hospital. It wasn't said at all. But I'm just going by the way it looked. For instance, you saw the grandmother holding an iPad. It's on her fucking lap. And, I mean, we've been seeing people killing other people with these robots through an iPad, iPhone, shit like that. So, it makes me believe that the grandma was doing it. Okay, we find out how many accomplices Kamui has. And honestly, I had a shiver up my spine. I was like, oh shit, when I found out some of the information in this episode. Like, supposedly, Kirito Kamui, ugh, I can't believe his freaking name is Kirito, seriously, like I said, ugh. Anyways, seeing Kamui, actually finding out more about him, how in the past he was on this plane. This plane had a crash and everybody died and he was the sole survivor. Kamui was the single sole survivor on this plane, and I think it had a total of 185 children. I think that's the total it had. And the thing is, we find out at the end of this episode, is that all these, like, people that died, all these kids that died with, you know, on the plane crash, and, you know, Kamui was the only one to survive, well, he made holograms, like, aged-up holograms on all these kids that died, like 185 different kids. And so this brings the question up. Okay. Here is the thing I am wondering about this episode, that it opens up and makes me wonder about something going on in this episode. Now, I could be wrong, but I remember specifically in Season 1 of Psycho-Pass, where Sibyl chooses your career for you. For instance, like, if you have certain, like, you know, adept qualities at, like, being a police officer, you'll be turned into a police officer. Sibyl chooses your career. So here's where the question pops up with this episode when you find out about all these different holograms. I don't know if it's going to be explained later or not, but for all these holograms to be aged up, okay? Like, they were children. They were children. They were fucking children before they choose their career. Before they could actually choose their career, they were children when they died. So the question is, even if all these different holograms, let's just put it on a hypothesis of, like, you know, hypothetical question or something, like, let's say every single person that's a hologram, like, all these aged up holograms are being used by one specific person, different people, okay? And how did these people with the aged up holograms get their job? Like, how? How did they get their job? Like, you gotta think about this, okay? Sibyl knows when these characters die, like, for instance, when certain people die. Like, you know, Sibyl has it in record. I can understand because the psychopath is probably detected as clear. Okay, that's been demonstrated enough. But the thing that makes me question is, even if this is like, let's say, Kamui doing this, interchanging between different holograms, how is he being able to get these jobs? Because you would have to live each of these persons, like, individual lives. Like, you would have to live 185 different lives. That's what I'm trying to get at. For instance, all these different jobs, like you saw one person that was in engineering, one that was like a tech, different stuff like that. There's just so many different fucking jobs all over all the different holograms that each one of them did, and it makes you wonder, like, to get these jobs, you would have to have, like, knowledge to get this job, and Sibyl would have to specifically choose this job for you. So how did all these people, even if they were all the same people, like, that means they all had to live different lives. Like, different lives. And not everybody's gonna have the brain capacity or whatever to actually get the job they wanted. So, I mean, that's the big question we have to wonder right now, because it didn't really say that every hologram was being used by someone different, but it did hint that there was accomplices that was helping Kamui. I'm going to give or take and say there's probably 8 or 10 accomplices that are probably helping Kamui. And still, even with these 185 different holograms being used, you would still have to live every single one of their lives to actually get a job in that specific field. So, yeah, anyways, moving past that, hopefully it gets explained, because, like I said, Sibyl's the only one that can choose your job for you. So, yeah, they can't just jump into a random job. They can't just say, oh, I want to get hired here and get a job. They can't do that. Sibyl chooses it, so that's just one question I'm wondering right now. So, moving past that, let's move past that entire event of this episode. Okay, we find out a lot of information about the organs and different stuff like that in this episode. And it hints at maybe why Kamui can't be detected. But we still don't have the full picture of why Kamui can't be detected. But I have some theories. I have some theories on this. Supposedly, Kamui was once in the system in the past. We found out about this because he was on record on the plane crash and he was the sole survivor. And he went to a doctor that one of the doctors technically healed him, like a surgeon. And the surgeon, I'm guessing, had to do some form of organ transplants inside of him. The thing is, with this brought up, we found out that if, let's say, I had a clear psychopath, okay? I have 100% clear psychopath, and then my organs can be transplanted to, like, anyone, okay? I could transplant them to, let's say, Kamui. If I had a clear psychopath, and I transferred to Kamui if he needed him, his psychopath would be at the level I'm guessing my psychopath would be at the last time it was given. That's what I'm thinking right now, because from what we found out is that when you transfer your organs, you're technically transferring your psychopath over to the person. That's pretty much what is going on. And maybe this is why the psychopath no longer goes up, because it detects the final, like, you know, psychopath from you going into someone else, and then it causes, you know, a bunch of errors on this person because it detects 2 different psychopaths, and that is why technically their psychopath goes back down and up constantly, like these different people. So this explains a lot. It really, really does. So I have no problems with that. It still brings the question, like, why doesn't Kamui actually get detected at all? I mean, we found out you can kind of mess up the errors and stuff where your psychopath will be falsely good, but it still doesn't explain why he can't be detected, because, I mean, he was once detected in the system, as we can see, because he was on the plane crash record. So why can't he be detected now? Is it because of the margin of errors of organ transplants? Is that really the reason causing that? But anyways, moving past that, Sibyl. Sibyl brings up something very interesting with this episode I do want to talk about. And I actually kind of got my question answered from last week. I questioned, like, why didn't Sibyl turn off the Dominators? Like, I mean, you'd think with all these different Dominators going off, pretty much, and being the same, pretty much, Inspector, killing everybody, you'd think, you know, Sibyl would turn those Dominators off. Because we have seen examples of this in Season 1 where Sibyl has turned off Dominators and spoken through Dominators and stuff like that. So I was questioning and wondering, like, why wouldn't Sibyl turn it off? Well, with this episode, we also find out why Sibyl hasn't done it, because at the moment, the inspector that's currently using the gun, for instance, the Dominator, even though we know it's not technically the inspector, it's actually Kamui, the inspector has a clear psychopath. So technically, Sibyl cannot judge this person, and if Sibyl was to judge this person and deactivate that person's Dominator, it would be like Sibyl is accepting that it has flaws. And Sibyl does not want to accept that it has flaws and it's broken, because that was the entire first purpose of the first season. I remember that. Sibyl did not want to admit those flaws. And so, with this reveal, we find out that if Sibyl would have actually accepted these flaws, for instance, I mean, technically, this would already be over. The plot would already be over, pretty much. I mean, you would have it to where Sibyl would deactivate the Dominators, Akane would go kill the person, stuff like that. But let's move past that. That's not a big issue. The only thing I see out of this is a couple of things I do want to discuss. Okay, Sibyl doesn't want to acknowledge that it's wrong. Fine, I understand that completely. But there's like 8 Dominators. There's a complete example of 8 different Dominators. And the thing is, you would think Sibyl would actually, at the very least, turn off 7 of these Dominators. It would turn off 7 of these Dominators because there's definitely some false identity going on here. Like, someone's stealing someone else's identity, like, for instance, the Inspectors, and that's why there's different, like, 8 different signatures of the same person. I'm guessing the only reason why Sibyl doesn't want to turn those off either is because, once again, it'll probably be saying, like, it has flaws, and it doesn't want to turn those off. So, that could possibly be the reason. But either way, we find out Sibyl's standpoint on Kamui. In the past, with Makishima Shogo, Sibyl wanted to integrate him into the Sibyl system. That's what Sibyl wanted to do to Makishima Shogo. Well, in this, we found out that Sibyl doesn't want to do the exact same thing that they wanted to do to Makishima Shogo. They want to eradicate Kamui. They want to kill him, eradicate him, squash him like a bug, get him out of the picture, because he is a contradiction to the overall system, and he should not exist. He's an irregular. He should not exist at all, and so this is like a massive-ass bug in Sibyl. Sibyl does not like that, so it's just, since the person is like this, and it's not just because, like, his psychopath level can stay in a certain level range, it's not that like Makishima Shogo. His actual psychopath is just non-existent. It's like he has no, like, identity at all, and Sibyl cannot detect him. So this is something very bad for Sibyl, and they want to actually eradicate this person. So it's really cool how this was done in this episode. I like it a lot. It answers a lot of my questions on why Sibyl's, like, you know, not deactivating Dominators, what is Sibyl's standpoint on Kamui, stuff like that. And there's a lot of different other pieces in this episode that foreshadow other events. For instance, Akane is clearly getting a little bit crazier. Like, there's constant, like, inner monologues with her thinking about Kogami in her mind about her previous experiences, her previous investigations, stuff like that. And she's clearly breaking down while retaining her psychopaths at a certain level. And this is becoming more and more apparent as it continues to go along in the episodes, because it seems like she's starting to flip shit sometimes. So you gotta wonder, like, is Akane really gonna go crazy by the time of the end of the series and keep an actual level psychopath level? It's a possibility. We'll have to see exactly where that goes. But moving on to the next question of topic I want to talk about is the overall people that are technically worshipping Kamui. I talked about this a little bit last week with Shisui. I talked a little bit about her, and I said my standpoint on it. Yes, she got her psychopath level dropped down and she was fine again. She doesn't have to worry about really being prosecuted. Okay. It still doesn't, like, overall represent the personality change, like the fast personality change of her and, you know, the other people that are technically worshipping Kamui. It really makes me kind of like, what? Like the dude that committed suicide in this episode because he believed in Kamui so much. I mean, if he really cared about his psychopath level so much and wanted to lower it so much and all that, you would think he wouldn't want to kill himself, because that would mean he would want to live and have a free life. But for him to kill himself, it just doesn't make a lick of sense with how everybody is just worshipping Kamui, like, worshiping him. And they're literally fucking worshipping Kamui. So the question that's brought up with this is, why are they doing it? Is it because of just, that's how they are, that's how we're supposed to accept it? Or is there something else going on here with the Togane Foundation? For instance, we find out about illegal drugs being used with Kamui's people, like he's trying to change to psychopaths. Like, in the person that committed suicide in this episode, like the person, he had a bunch of, like, illegal drugs all around him. And he had a bunch of organs surrounding him, too, in the hideout with Kamui and stuff like that. So, clearly, Kamui's messing with drugs. Or is it because of these drugs that was from the Togane Foundation that is causing these people to actually worship Kamui? That's the thing we gotta wonder right now, because that could be the reason why all these different specific people are worshipping Kamui, because they're getting medication to lower the psychopaths and it's causing them to go crazy. That is a possibility for what is going on in this week's episode of Psycho-Pass Season 2. So, the episode, it's a good episode. It's a really, really damn good episode. Like, we have a lot of stuff going on with Togane. For instance, Togane finds out that Mika snuck into his room, stole some information, and we find out some more information on Togane, how he was once an enforcer in the past. I'm guessing he got fired, and now he's an enforcer again. So there's a lot of mysteries coming up around Togane that just does not sit right with me at all. And another thing, too, is that the entire, like, evidence of the holograms, like the 185 different holograms of the aged-up holos, pretty much, it's because of Mika why this wasn't discovered sooner. You had to where the boy wonder that hacked everybody, pretty much, like, hacked in and pretty much found out that everybody was holograms. Well, pretty much, he gave the information to Mika in her, like, email. And he was actually going to say it to her verbally in, I think, episode 3 or 4, was episode 3 or 4, where everybody got brutally killed, pretty much. He was actually going to say that to her, and Mika stopped him from saying that, so clearly, Mika once again caused another fail in this series. For instance, she caused it to where the investigation got stuck further back because she stopped him from actually telling the information he had on the holograms, and which in turn killed a lot of people, up to this very point in the episodes. So, yeah, Mika, once again, is the real main reason why so many people have technically died recently. So, yeah, it can be blamed on her. She's incredibly useless. I'm just gonna say, she's so fucking useless. All she's caused is people to die, be annoying, she's a bitch-chun, stuff like that. And it just is kind of frustrating how she is. Now, we get a little bit of Kogami in this week's episode of Psycho-Pass Season 2, and I know all those massive fans of Kogami's gonna be like, yeah, Kogami, yeah! It's pretty cool. I like seeing him again. He's a badass. I like his personality. I loved him from the first season. And maybe this is the hope that my theory might prove true, and a bunch of other Chibi's theories might prove true, that Togane could be Kogami. It's a possibility, because, I mean, the more the episodes progress, the more you see Akane, like, hallucinating, thinking that Togane is Kogami. She's seeing these connections, and, I mean, the way the dialogue was similar between Togane and Kogami in this episode, it just clearly shows that maybe they're both the same person. Now, I guess that pretty much wraps up what I really want to say about the episode. The episode's decent. It's a very good episode. I mean, even though I talked about some certain things I'm wondering about, I'm just talking about certain things that need to be answered. It definitely needs to be answered because it's not a flaw at the moment. It's not. Just some of the flaws with the overall identities, with the holograms of how someone got these specific jobs, different stuff like that, but there's not much of an issue. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.